Hello, welcome back to the channel. You're with me, Charlie Cowan, RevOpsCharlie, and welcome to another edition of the RevOpsCharlie Demo Day, where I get the opportunity to speak with leading technology vendors that are in the revenue tech space and understand a little bit more about the problems that they solve and who they solve that for. And today, I'm thrilled to welcome Werner Schmidt from Lative to the channel. So welcome, Werner.
Very well, thanks for having me, and good to be here, Charlie.
Great stuff. So maybe let's start off just for those that don't know you or for the company, maybe give a little bit of background to yourself, your role at the organization, and what Lative does.
Yes, yeah, no, thanks. So, Charlie, I've been in RevOps, 20 plus years before founding Lative, back early 2000. So, have seen the challenges in the role grow as the business became more complex and the technology stacks became the ever-growing technology stacks. I mean, we're a technology company now. And how you optimize and make sure that you've got the right tech stack to really drive a high performance through sales organizations, and continue to grow, through the good times and the bad times. So it's been quite a journey. I really enjoyed it. There's still lots to learn, and hence why we found Lative to help RevOps leaders just take some of that work that's pretty difficult to do right now when it comes to productivity and efficiency and capacity planning, and just put that all into a technology and just rather to help companies make the right decisions.
So you came from a RevOps role on the customer side before setting up Lative. So you experienced some of the pain or the frustrations of trying to do this yourself.
Exactly, Charlie. I mean, it was back in website days, 2006, 2007, when we're just trying to figure out what's the productivity of an organization, the sales productivity, and it was really manual to figure it out and calculate it, and that's always been that way.
Yeah. So maybe just help us understand in your context. So when we think about sales capacity, how do you describe that in your language to customers?
Yeah, so I think, Charlie, I mean, mainly it's really, if we think about it as from a performance standpoint, how you really accurate measure performance, how you doing that efficiently, efficiency, and then using that data to then help you plan and plan accurately and produce accurate capacity plans, or produce quotas in a more systematic way.
Okay, so I might have I don't know 100 sales reps, and they're onboarding at a certain rate, they're leaving at a certain rate, and a certain percentage of them are hitting target or not hitting target. And so it's to help me as a CRO maybe to understand how many people I need in seat at a particular time. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly, because you've got so much movements of data, and that's what makes this all so difficult. Because you got all this data of people, like you say, right, coming and going, maternity leave or holiday leave, or long-term sick, or whatever the issue might be, or you might even have, some salespeople not always focused 100% on sales. So then it's 50% of their time is focused on sales, another 50% is focused somewhere else. So you need to factor on all those data points to then help you understand what's actually the true productivity of what the sales team can deliver, and then use those numbers to then feed your capacity planning models, so that you can accurately do capacity planning. So that's all. Yeah, exactly. Or do even a bit further on, right? What's the target capacity? Or sorry, what's the targets I want to deliver on, and do I have the capacity to reach that?
Yeah, it's a reminder. It would take me back to some days when I worked in it was a contact center platform, and there you had workforce planning, I think it was. How many contact center reps do we need working which shifts to deal with the certain amount of calls or emails that were going to be coming in? And so this is the sort of same concept, but how many salespeople do we need to be able to get to our top-down plans?
Yes, exactly. And that's why a lot of it, and you've said it there, Charlie, right? A lot of this has always been done top down. and not at the granularity it needs to be done. So when we founded Lative, it was like, well, how we got to do this bottoms up. And then use the operational data to actually feed the models, so that you can actually get a true accurate reflection of what what your team will currently can expect to do and do in the future. And then if you're making changes by adding some salespeople or maybe optimizing, or there's new product lines coming or whatever, you need to factor that all in, which then can give you a far more, we call a revenue efficient capacity plan, so that you've got enough capacity there to reach your numbers.
So when you start to think about your ideal customer profile, so the type of customer that's a good fit for solving this problem, are they at a certain size? As in, you need to have a certain number of sellers before the problem becomes big enough to warrant solving.
Yeah, I think generally what we're starting to see is once you get to 5, 6 sellers, upward of that, there starts to be lots of data movements, and it changes. Once you get to 10 sellers, this really starts to become a problem, because now you've got quite a few people. Things are moving. You start to see attrition, you and leave, for example. But then certainly when you get into 15, 20 people, it just becomes unmanageable. You're right. There's just too much. There's too much data movement, and people then start to move between teams. The complexity, there's just the layers and layers of complexity start growing as that team gets bigger. So generally, that's where you would start to say, hey, okay, now we actually need to, a system in place to be able, or technology in place to be able to help manage this for us and help us accurately plan then what would need to look like in the future.
Yeah. I can remember my time as a VP of sales, and a lot of this was happening in Google Sheets, and these, a row for each member of the team, and then empty seats, and when do we think we're going to hire someone, and how long is it going to take them to ramp? Do we think someone's a flight risk and they might leave, and how long might that seat be empty? And so much manual guesswork really going into trying to build out how you might get to the number.
Yeah, exactly, and very much still happening today that way, right? There's it's all done on spreadsheets and Google Sheets, and even once you've done that, right? It's just these are such important decisions that you're making off this data. You've run a sales team, the expense of a salesperson. It's not exactly the low paid role; these are high paid roles. And getting it wrong is expensive. These are expensive mistakes, and that's again what we try to help avoid, right? When to hire, when not to hire, and making sure you get a more accurate reflection of what those dates should be, and then what the impact will be if you're going to make changes. What is the impact? What's the impact to the number? If we do lose 2 people, the attrition ticks up, and so forth, and so that you can start having a far earlier on conversation with finance, say, hey, this is what it looks like it's going to happen. If it does happen, what's our contingency plan? How are we going to close the gap? So that you instead of us, how it tends to be, we get to the QBR or the quarterly business review, and then we pull in all the data, and then we realize, actually we got a gap, but you're 3 months in, right? You're 4 months in. And it's a bit late. And I think, the way business is operating today, we need to be, far more real time, being able to see this data, see the impact of decisions. You previous sales leader saying, right, if I made this decision, what happened? And if it worked, great. Well, then do more of it. If it didn't, then course correct.
Yeah. And so in terms of those target customers, who are the typical personas that you're selling into? I would imagine a chief revenue officer, but who else has is feeling the pain that you can solve?
I think that on the pain, certainly it's RevOps, right? Because they're the ones being asked for the numbers at any point in the year. What's the productivity of the sales organization? Well, what's my return on investment? Is the team efficient or not? And suddenly, in RevOps, you're scrambling to pull the data and crunch all the numbers and get it out. And by the time you've done that, you're out of data already. But and that's it. And of course, CROs, right? I think there's the landscape's changed. We've moved, as we're all well aware of, from growth at all costs to more efficient growth now and profitability. And that means that a lot of that onus is now put onto CROs. CROs don't necessarily just own the number; they own the cost behind that as well, which means they own the efficiency of how to get to that number. And having those data points to hand are now important, because that's what the board's asking and the investors are asking for. Or if we're putting a plan and we're looking for funding, and there's going to be, plan, well, we're going to, for the next 2-3 years, what's it going to look like to get to those numbers? You need to be able to model that out. And show, and that's important. So having a technology being able to do all that for you just saves a ton of time. And not only that, but it just you start making the right investment decisions, and making those right investment decisions are crucial to businesses now, especially in the economic and macro environment that we're in right now.
Yeah. And I saw on the website you've got an App Exchange listing. So just thinking more broadly about the types of tech that customers have got, because I guess that's where the input comes into Lative. Are there certain technologies that are a great fit, that's the great source of data, and what do you see across your customers pulling data into your platform?
Yes, I think we started with the Salesforce App Exchange just because of the real-time aspect we get, but also security was a big piece, right? It's not easy to get onto the Salesforce App Exchange, but we wanted to make sure, because we're highly secure for the data, and speed, right? We later to be up and running in less than 15 minutes. Yeah. So that's you want that time to value to be really high, and then there's a little bit of configuration that needs to be done on our end afterwards. So that was the first piece. We've got HubSpot that we're working on now, so that'll make it easier. So we're covering the main CRMs, but that's So that's the other piece of data we tend to look at, depending on the size of the organization. Sometimes there's some cost data that we want to automate the feeds on. So we'll do that. But otherwise, that's pretty much it. It's mainly the CRM data we're looking at. And that's what we transform into make sense and help make the right decisions and get us to a place where we build revenue efficient capacity plans in real time.
And would you say that the main competition is a spreadsheet, that's what people are doing today, and it's about getting them off that?
Yeah, I think if you had to, there's some other players that cross over in certain areas. But mainly it's you're up against spreadsheets, which is a formidable competitor, because we all love our spreadsheets. You can do anything you want with them, but that's the problem, right? That it's because of that we've got the situations that we find ourselves in, is that it's too flexible, too many guesses, too many, and I think we don't live in that world anymore. We need far more accuracy. Especially with this relentless focus on efficiency and profitability.
If you're up for it, Werner, it'd be great to maybe share your screen and see the tool, and that might bring to life a little bit of what we're talking about how, as a RevOps professional or a CRO, I'm able to view this capacity planning and understand what kind of decisions I might be able to take because of it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'll do that now. So what I'll do is I'll just do a short demo of the solution, and just give a high level, how we go through. And of course, if anyone wants a far more in-depth demo, of course they can contact us afterwards, and we'll do that, because there's lots to cover off, right? There's lots of pieces to it. But the main point is, right, we want to help you and help organizations measure performance in a far more structured way and systematic way. So let me just get it open here 1 second. You should be able to see my screen now.
All right. Yeah, we got that. That's great.
Okay, excellent. So the first piece, as I mentioned, is we're going to talk about performance. This is where we measure the performance, and that's calculating sales productivity. And what we mean by that is the yield per rep per unit of time. We're then going to talk efficiency, and that's where we bring the costs in. And then we're using, we're using that operational data to then build the capacity plans, which we'll center in. So just to start off with performance. Really, performance is now really putting in the data. As I mentioned, we're on the Salesforce App Exchange. For Salesforce customers, you can be up and running literally in 15-20 minutes. If you're not on Salesforce, it takes a bit longer, but of course we are CRM agnostic. So the first thing you're going to notice here is the sales productivity. So in this instance, I can see, for quarter to date, for the period of 1st of July to the 30th of September, the sales team is generating $149,000 per person. And I can see on the far right there, I've got 11 salespeople. I can then see how that productivity trends over time, because we also bring in the history. So because it's important, right, for RevOps teams and CROs, right, you want to see, or sales leaders, you want to make sure that your productivity is maintained and flat or increasing, ideally increasing. So these are the type of trend lines that we want to see, and we want to see it continuing to go up. What we also tend to do is look at like average productivity over the last 4 quarters, so that we can start to look at pacing, so that we can see if we're ahead in the current quarter or not, which is always super important. Starting to remove things like seasonality, so that we compare in quarter over quarter, or year over year. That gives us a much truer reflection of the performance. And then we start doing things like predictability, right? So now we got your productivity data. We can start to then predict and say, okay, well, this is where we expect you to land. And this is really there to help, when you've got a forecast, help validate those forecasts. So we're giving you another triangulation point, which is important, because you've got great forecasting vendors out there, and they're doing a really complex and hard job. And it's okay, great. Now I've got my forecast. How do I help just make sure and validate that from what the sales team are actually producing today? And then you've got the ability to slice and dice the data. I always give this good example is if we let's go look at in the United States, for example, in our demo set of data here, let's look at deal type, new business, and I can get very specific to an area or to a team, where I can now go say, in the United States, for the new business team, I can see they generated just under $34,000. And I can see there's 7 people in that team. So now you can get a good sense. So now I think of enablement teams and enablement programs, right? So what are the programs I'm going to be doing to drive this team to produce at a higher level? Because right now I can see my training productivity is 45,000 normally on average per person, and it's at 34, so it's dropping. And that's not what we generally want to see in a new business team. So what enablement activities are we doing, or what's going on, so that I can see, rather see an increase in productivity there than a decrease.
And when we've got the predicted capacity number on the right, what does that mean?
So the predicted capacity is just allowing me to say, okay, well, if my sales team's producing at 149,000 for the current quarter, on average they're doing 111,000. We've got a bunch of algorithms and things happening in the background to say, well, then we based on that and the trajectory that we see and how many days are left in the month of the quarter, we're given an indication of where we would expect you to land. So again, that's really just helping with validate the forecasts that you'll be pulling together from, if you've got a forecast vendor in, or just doing it sometimes on spreadsheets a lot of the time, or in Salesforce, or in HubSpot. So this is just helping with those. We've got all this data, so let's just help you show you where we expect you to land.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, good. So that's really about performance. So a very accurate way to measure performance and see where your productivity is coming from or it's not coming from. The next thing we do is we then get into the cost. So now we're saying, okay, well, look, how we saw the productivity, and we saw, but how efficient was that? And this is what we feel very strongly on, right? It's all well and good to look at the numbers or where the productivity is, or your target productivity needs to be. But actually, what does that look from a cost standpoint? So this is where we bring in the cost of the sales organization. And now if we've got your costs, we know your productivity and we know your costs. Now we can start to show things like return on investment. Before I go there, it's important that costs can be set up. Each company, wants to look at their cost of acquisition, for example, a bit differently. So in Lative, you've got the ability to really adjust that to any level that you need, and bring in marketing costs or burden costs and so forth. And then what we're doing is we then giving you your return on investment. So now I can see at a high level, right, the whole team, I've got 11 people, they're delivering a 2.9x return. So for every dollar that I'm putting in, I'm getting a 2.9x return. And then we trend that over time. So super important, right, to really understand what's my return on investment, and what does that look like. So
these costs would come in from your HR system, or Workday,
exactly. It's up to the customer to decide if they want us to connect into Workday. We'll pull it in from there. Generally, we actually just get these as manual feeds. But yes, it's up to the customer to decide how that would work. And then one of the other big important pieces we're doing here is we're looking at things called average ramp time, where we actually calculate in the number of days it takes for the team to ramp. And this is important, right? Back to enablement programs, onboarding programs. You need to know exactly how many days is it taken to ramp people. Because that's all really important information when we get into capacity planning.
And how do you define ramping? It's always a good question as to what does it mean to be ramped in this context?
Yeah, so when we're looking at ramping here, we're looking at how many days does it take to get to average productivity of the organization. Now, again, companies can set this either way, but that's fundamentally what we do. And we in the background are always going to calculate that, because that's really how we should be looking at it. But sometimes we see, well, just say that it's once they get to 50,000, then we consider them ramped, or once they get to 100,000, or once they whatever the milestone might be. But generally in the background, we're always going to calculate how many days it takes to ramp to average productivity. Okay, good. And then one of the things, once you've got your costs right and you've got your return on investment, that's well and good. But now you can start to look at things across these. We've got this dimensional aspect to Lative, where you can start to bring in what dimensions do I want to view my business by, like location we looked at earlier, a segment, role, the sales team, customer success team, or the support and functions, because that changes the return on investment. Are they ramping or not? Deal type would be another one, add-on business, renewal business, and so forth. And where that becomes important is when I start to look at things like, how is my strategic team's return on investment versus the growth team or versus the SMB team? Really important information, right? Because where am I going to invest my next dollar? I need to understand that. And I need to understand the dimensional aspect. So, Lative, this is one of a very powerful feature of us is being able to not only bring in the cost and say, okay, well, let's see how the sales organization looks at it, but what is it? How's the segments of the business doing? So think of product teams, right? Really interested. How's my product A doing compared to product B? Or so forth, or even looking at things like new business, right? What's my new business return on investment or renewal return on investment versus add-on? So I get a good sense of that. Again, helping me with my investment decisions. Where do we invest the next dollars, and what would that look like?
Yeah, I'd say that's really handy. Do you find that this is more a platform for planning season? People are doing something at the end of the year, or are they? So to
that question, Charlie, like if we're thinking about is it for planning season only? Well, and that's what we're changing, right? This is why this is all systematic now and automated, because the problem is we only do planning once a year. And is it really the world we live in now, where we go do our capacity plan and we say, okay, that's what we're going to execute, and let's see how we do for the next 12 months. We need to be seeing what the capacity is for the next 12 months, but we need to then see the execution against it. And that's really important. And that's what this is, the whole real-time capability brings you, right? Is I can actually see, okay, let's take an example here. Let's go look at role. I'll take that sales team, and I'll take it from January to December, and I'm going to apply it, right? And I can see, well, if I look at the sales team this way, I can see that next year I should generate 6.6 million, and I can see I've got 17 heads to do that, and I can see what the cost is. Okay, I can go add a head count and say I'm going to add a head in February, and now I can see, okay, great. Well, if I do that, I'm not going to just generate 6.6 million. Now I'm going to generate 6.9 million. So now, so I can very much get to a very accurate plan that I can build on. If I need to hit, let's call it 7 million in capacity next year, well, then I need to hire someone in February and someone in May, and then I can see I can get to 7.1 million, and I go from 17 heads to 19 heads. So now that's all well and good, okay? But how am I going to execute against that? So what we do is we're very granular, right? We start to look at the productivity on a very on a monthly basis. Well, it's actually daily. We summarize. We're just in the monthly summary here. So I can actually see what I'm expected to deliver on the region that I'm looking at month by month. So that starts to allow me to then build my capacity plan, and I can see then how I expect the people to ramp and what I'm going to do. So I get a very, very granular view of what that needs to be. And then, of course, as you saw in the earlier modules, as we execute it and you see in the performance, you can then see your performance against your plan at a far more granular level than how it's ever been done today. And that's super important when we start to really think about like what's the capacity that I can deliver on a month-by-month basis. How have I executed across that? And do I have any gaps? Or am I going to miss my target? Because capacity is effectively a productivity target. So once I know what my productivity target is, I want to see then how I'm doing against my productivity. So it's a long answer, but very much this is a throughout the year technology, being able to not only take your operational data, see where you're performing, where you're not performing. Am I doing that efficiently or not? And then how am I executing across my plan? And am I actually going to achieve my targets, or am I not? But being able to see that far sooner than how it's currently being today, because of course what you've just seen today takes weeks, if not months, to actually accurately do in our beloved spreadsheets.
Yeah, exactly. It takes so long and it's so complicated with all these VLOOKUP formulas that by the time you've planned for the year, you probably don't want to look at that spreadsheet again, because you just want to get on and deal with selling. Whereas if you can make it really seamless and someone leaves or a seat gets filled, just make it really easy for people to understand the changes that they're happening in real time. I can see that being really valuable.
Yeah, no, exactly. And then the other piece that leads to that is the quotas, right? You've got to set your quotas right. And that's actually a module we've got coming out later this year, when you're able to actually set your quotas correctly. So you always know at any point, how much quota do I have deployed to the organization, which is always done. And you're a sales leader, right? You needed to know that, because you need to know where have I got enough deployed, and what's my over assignment levels, because as we execute through the year. So it's really important to be tracking all that. But ultimately, as I mentioned earlier, that gives you target productivity. Once I got target productivity, I can see what my current productivity is. It's a far more accurate and precise way to know if we're going to get to the number or not. And a far more accurate way to actually measure performance and the business.
Now that's been super helpful, Werner. How do people best get in touch with you and with the Lative team to find out more?
Yeah, well, myself definitely on LinkedIn, of course. That's easy, and if not, it's Werner at lative.io. It's WERNER at lative.io. Please just ping me, or our sales team, so info at lative.io as well. But it'd be great, yeah. And the other option, of course, go to the website, lative.io, and just book a demo or book to speak with the sales team. It would be great to hear from you to go much deeper than what I've done. I've normally lasted a lot longer than that. That's just the high level, but lots of pieces to it. But I really enjoyed being here. So Charlie, thanks very much for having me.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Werner. We'll chat to you soon.
Great. Thanks, Charlie.